The Warlocks exotic Geomag stabilizers recently got a mention in the patch notes and got a pretty good buff. As of right now, the Geomag stabilizers are working differently to how they used to work. The way this new change to the Geomag stabilizers work is whenever you collect ionic traces on a arc subclass, it's going to grant you super energy. So I thought, let's figure it out and test how much super energy these ionic traces really give. And the results may surprise you, so stick around right to the end to see. So this build that I've designed works around the Geomag stabilizers, the Warlock legs exotic piece, and obviously Stormcaller with the Chaos Reach super. Now this arc build for the Warlocks works very similar to every other arc build out there. This build is going to consist of massively increased ability uptime, so that means spamming grenades, spamming melees, and putting healing rifts down everywhere. Not to mention infinite jolt so that all your enemies are zapped, being permanently amplified to run around and slide faster, and a little arc soul following you around to do extra damage. However, the difference between this arc build and all the other arc builds out there is the buff to the Geomag stabilizers, and it's going to mean that we're going to get plenty of chaos reaches before you can even realize. This build is very fun, it does a lot of damage, and I'll be surprised if you don't add it to your loadout. Now the exotic armor piece that this whole build works around is obviously the Geomag stabilizers. There is two fundamental bonuses to these boots, and I'm going to explain them as easy as I can. The first one, damaging targets with Chaos Reach extends its duration. This one is pretty self-explanatory. As long as you are damaging targets, it's going to slowly extend the duration that you are in your Chaos Reach. This is very easily seen when doing damage against adds versus doing damage against one specific boss. Doing consistent damage to one specific enemy can make this duration of the super last for an extra few seconds, which will result in a lot more damage. However, when you are damaging multiple targets and killing a bunch of adds, you're not going to see this extended duration as much. And the second part of the boots is collecting ionic traces grant you energy for Chaos Reach. So if you didn't know, an ionic trace is basically just the arc energy that is generated while using an arc subclass. This is the same as getting a fire sprite when using solar, getting a void breach while using void, and getting a tangle when using strand. With the help of some aspects and fragments, we're going to be generating as many ionic traces as we possibly can to make sure we can get infinite supers as fast as possible. So jumping over to the subclass, we want to use Chaos Reach. That's pretty self-explanatory. I like to use Healing Rift, Burst Glide, Chain Lightning, and Pulse Grenade. As for the aspects, Arc Soul because it is simply the best. Every time you put down a rift, it's going to give you an Arc Soul whenever you run in that rift. This is basically just a little arc buddy that will follow you around and kill adds that you're not looking at. On top of this, whenever you are amplified, this Arc Soul will get an increased fire rate, and it's very good at killing adds. We're going to be pairing this with Electrostatic Mind, our bread and butter of this build. As it states, defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an ionic trace. So there we go, just doing anything to do with arc damage in this build is going to create an ionic trace. The best thing about these ionic traces is we don't have to worry about them as they will seek towards us. We don't have to go out of our way to get them. As long as we generate them, they're going to seek towards us and we will collect them automatically. Jumping over to the fragments, let's start off with Spark of Amplitude. Rapidly defeating targets while amplified will create Orb of Power. This is very good. We need Orbs of Power. They help our build out. Moving on to Spark of Discharge, Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create an ionic trace. We want ionic traces, so let's get this one on and use arc weapons. Spark of Shock, our arc grenades will jolt targets, and Spark of Ions, defeating a jolted target will create ionic traces. So by using a grenade, it's going to jolt the target, and then the grenade killing them will then also create an ionic trace. So just by throwing grenades out, we've already guaranteed ourselves a way of getting ionic traces. Now this build will also revolve around one exotic weapon called the Delicate Tomb, a exotic fusion rifle. Now this weapon was literally made for this build. As it states, final blows with this weapon have a chance to generate ionic traces. Powerful foes and guardians always generate an ionic trace. So by using this weapon and just killing enemies, we're going to be creating even more ionic traces for those Geomag stabilizers. So far, throwing a grenade will generate ionic traces, getting a melee kill will create ionic traces, killing with the Delicate Tomb will get more ionic traces, and sometimes our Arc Soul killing enemies and jolting them will also create some ionic traces. So this build is already pretty busted. Let's move over to some mods to make this even better than what it already sounds. With the help of these mods, it's going to reduce our grenade and melee cooldown even further, and also get more rifts out so that we can get more arc souls and infinite healing across the map. So the aim of all the mods here is basically to try and generate as many orbs of power, and then by picking those orbs of power, power up, it's going to reduce our cooldowns. So starting off with the helmet, I like to run triple harmonic siphon, which states rapid arc final blows create an orb of power. Because we're going to be using arc weapons, it's going to generate some orbs of power. For the gloves, firepower and heavy handed, which basically means whenever we get kills with our grenade and melee, it's going to again generate some more orbs of power. For the chest piece, just run whatever damage resistance mods you need. I like to just run one of each, one arc, one solar, and one void, but it's completely personal preference. On the boots, I like to run double innovation. This will reduce our grenade cooldown whenever we pick those orbs of power up that we've been generating, and invigoration, which will reduce our melee cooldown whenever we pick up orbs of power. And finally, for the class item, double distribution just to reduce those cooldowns even further, and bomber again to reduce our grenade cooldown. This build is a lot of fun and it's super powerful. It's got a lot of boss damage potential and heaps of ad clear potential as well. I've been having a lot of fun with this one and I recommend you guys give it a go too. I would be putting a dim link down below of this loadout, but the loadout system in Destiny is currently disabled and there's nothing we can do about it. But anyway, Guardians, that will wrap this one up here. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, feel free to drop a like and a subscribe down below. But anyway, thank you for watching and I'll see you later.